In anticipation of the upcoming film Fantastic Four: First Steps, Deconstructing Comics will be discussing the 4 previous FF live-action films in conjunction with the Comic Book Movie Oblivion podcast. This week we get started with the 1994 Roger Corman production, The Fantastic Four, a film that was killed after shooting was completed but leaked out on VHS and later DVD and YouTube. I'm joined by the hosts of CBMO, our own Kumar and Jordan, who have occasionally done DCP episodes together. Our conversation ran over 2 hours, so I'm releasing this as a 2-parter, with part 2 coming next week. Comic Book Movie Oblivion will release their version of our conversation this weekend. In part 1, we discuss some of the earliest Lee Kirby Fantastic Four issues before beginning our review of the film itself. First, I'd like to thank our patrons for helping to keep the show going. You can pitch in by pledging at least $2 a month at patreon.com/deconcomics. This is Tim.
This is Kumar.
This is Jordan.
And this is Deconstructing Comics and Comic Book Movie Oblivion. Welcome to Deconstructing Comics, crossing over this week with Comic Book Movie Oblivion. Welcome, Kumar and Jordan.
It's an old-fashioned crossover, just like Crisis on Infinite Earths.
And
Yes.
we're going to be talking about the 1994 Roger Corman Fantastic Four movie that was finished and then not released. This is kind of the first in a series of, we're going through, so we did Tim Catches Up with the MCU, but now we're doing Tim Catches Up with the Fantastic Four movies, because I've never seen any of them.
Me too.
Any of them.
So now I finally have watched this one. So, but first of all, tell us about Comic Book Movie Oblivion.
Okay. Comic Book Movie Oblivion, the description is it's the podcast about feature films based on comic books and comic strips that people have stopped talking about. I've never been quite happy with that description, even though I wrote it myself and I've read it out loud for 107 episodes. But it's basically the mission statement of the podcast was to cover comic book movies that were not in universes. So they're not Marvel Universe, DC Universe, or Sony Spider-Man Universe.
Yes.
So basically anything else
It's fair game.
is fair game. Yes. And we have done some very mainstream stuff, and we've done the most obscure stuff. And it basically started because I, maybe 5 years ago, watched the Popeye movie and was like, how come we haven't done this as a podcast? Or why aren't there podcasts covering this kind of movie?
Why aren't people talking about the Popeye movie?
Exactly. And then a year later, I discovered this movie starring Pam Grier called Friday Foster, which I had never heard of, and then saw in the description it was based on a comic strip. And I was like, how is it possible that I have never heard of this? I feel like I know a bit about comics and a bit about movies. And to me, it was shocking. I was like, well, somebody needs to cover this kind of material.
If you're wondering what could possibly be the nexus in which Pam Grier and Robin Williams
Yes.
coexist, it's us.
Yes, exactly.
So if you like the sound of that, tune in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, so now we're kind of both podcasts here. So let's talk about this movie.
Well, first we have to cover the comics.
Okay.
Yes.
That's right. So yeah,
Yes.
for their podcast, we talk about some comics first. All right. So
we got issues.
fill in my audience. I don't think we mentioned that on my show.
Okay, so our format is usually we choose some of the comics. Sometimes if it's like a long-running legacy title like Fantastic Four, we just have to kind of choose sort of random issues that maybe are related to the plot.
Yeah.
If it's not an exact match, like a graphic novel or something like that. For this episode, we've chosen Fantastic Four 1, 8, and 11, or 1, 5, and 8?
1, 5, 8, and
1,
11.
5. Okay. And and so usually what we do is we cover the comics, then we cover the movie, then we have 3 votes. We vote on the
Comics,
yay or nay. Do we like them or not like them? The movie, yay or nay, and then the adaptation, yay or nay. Recently, we've added a new vote if the movie's really bad called Is It Worse Than Veronica? You have to watch the movie Veronica to understand that statement. The other thing you just need to know is sometimes we ring a bell if we mention Alan Moore, H.P. Lovecraft, or Dune. Any of those three things.
Kumar's three bugbears.
The bell
If they
has
come
to
up,
be
I'm
rung.
supposed to, like Pavlov, I'm supposed to ring the bell to dissuade him from discussing it any further.
Yes, because we're on Zoom, it cuts out the bell sound, so we'll have to just say ding ding. And the other thing is we have all stars. So if an actor appears in 3 different movies on our podcast, they get labeled an all star. So like Timothy Dalton was in Brenda Starr, Flash Gordon,
and the Rocketeer.
So he's an all star, for example.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah. And was there anything else we need to cover?
If there's anything else, we'll explain it as we go along.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You'll just get some random stuff will get thrown at you.
Absolutely.
You'll have to deal with it.
Yeah,
You're in our house now.
I didn't know about it reading issue 11. I read 1 through 8, and then I didn't have any more time for reading them. So
no problem.
Sure. 11. Well, we'll talk about 11 as we get to it. Okay, I guess we can describe the origin of the Fantastic Four, which is issue 1. So this is by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. It's early Jack Kirby,
right,
1961. I think the inker on this one was George Klein on the first issue. Jack Kirby's best inker was Joe Sinnott, who came in later, and I think like Pete Kirby, I would say, is like around issue 40, 45, 50. Then we get the Kirby we know and love.
Right. I was going to ask about that. I assumed it was probably early work because
it's kind of pretty rough, I think. I felt in the early days. There's lots of questions about how much Stan Lee was really involved in this. My understanding is Martin Goodman, who is the head of Marvel, wanted Marvel to have a book like DC's JLA, a team of superheroes. And Kirby had already done Challengers of the Unknown at DC, which is kind of like these 4 adventurers that go out and, fight all sorts of stuff.
They appear in Teen Titans Go to the Movies.
That's right. Exactly. There's no credit box in this issue, so it's even Stan Lee's not like Smilin' Stan at this stage. He's like anonymous. But it starts in medias res, so we get this guy in a suit shooting this smoke signal out into the sky that says Fantastic Four.
I see. Yeah, they did sign it there along the right top corner.
Oh, right. You're right. Yes.
Signatures.
There's no huge credit box. You're right.
But it's not like what we had later with written by Smilin' Stan Lee and drawn by Jolton Jack Kirby or whatever.
Yes, exactly. It's a little bit more humble.
Yeah.
At this stage.
Imagine.
It's really hard to imagine, actually. A lot of this stuff is really like, it's really like watching the pilot episode of some show that you've watched 7 seasons of that you never saw the first episode of, and you're like, what is this?
Good point. It's a bit like watching The Cage.
Yeah, exactly. Like Star Trek's The Cage. You're like, who are these characters? What is going on? Why does everything look weird? Why is Spock's hair so weird? So this shadowy figure has shot this gun, which makes a smoke signal that spells out the words Fantastic Four. And this is a call to action for these other people. When they see the words in the sky, that's like, okay, we got to go. We're finally being activated like secret agents.
They know. They are like secret agents.
They've never had a mission before. This is their first mission.
And the first thing they do is start tearing up the city.
Exactly. So Sue Storm is she's this lady who's having a tea with a society friend, we're told. And when she sees the sign, she decides to turn invisible and walk away. I don't know why she needed to be invisible.
Yeah, there was no need.
Friend's apartment. She goes through the street knocking people over, and people are like, something rushed past me. Why is she invisible? Don't know. This is typical.
Because she can be.
Yeah,
because we need a demonstration.
Well, yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
that is it.
Yes, of course.
That is it.
Yes.
That is the
and
true
similarly,
reason.
We cut to Ben Grimm. This enormous figure, a shopkeeper is telling him that, I'm sorry, we don't have anything in your size.
Yeah.
Even though he's indoors, he manages to see the signal out the window somehow. And then he promptly strips off all the clothes he's wearing.
Yes,
and reveals that he's a monster. Why did he need to do that? He's exactly as monstrous with the clothes as he is without them.
Yes. And that they were kind of hiding his identity, so why not just stay hidden? And interestingly, his dialogue is very formal.
Yes.
Right?
It's not like the thing we know and love.
Yeah, not Ben Grimm at all.
No, not the. I guess he's from. He really turns into Jack Kirby.
Yeah.
Later in the series,
Right.
He's got a very kind of Brooklyn or Queens.
For example, in this stage, bah, everywhere it is the same. I live in a world too small for me. Not even contractions, for crying out loud.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. I noticed that too. Yeah, he talks pretty much like Reed Richards does at this point.
Yes.
Or Dr. Doom.
And we also learned that they live in Central City.
Right, yes, not even New York.
It's not New York. Central City is also, I think, where the Flash lives.
Oh,
that's right. A different company.
Yeah.
The distinguished competition.
Okay, so as Jordan said, the thing goes on a rampage. He starts smashing through doors, smashing through streets, crushing cars. He's just trying to get to Reed Richards, really.
He goes into the subway. Sorry, not the subway, the sewers.
Yep.
He decides he's close enough, and then he bashes his way up through the street.
Yep.
He doesn't even bother to find a manhole.
Yep. Pretty irresponsible. Now we meet Johnny Storm, who's he's this kid who loves hot rods, and he's working on a car. But then he sees the number 4 in the sky, as the others did, and he turns into fire and flies up into the air.
Not just that, but he just starts melting stuff.
Yes, absolutely. Doesn't care.
So he's just as
this guy's hot rod. This hot rod that he's worked
two.
very hard on.
Yeah, he just melts the roof and flies out.
He melts the car. I think he melts a window later.
Yeah.
Suze gets in a taxi and rides the taxi without telling the taxi driver where she wants to go.
Yep.
Then she decides she's close enough. Then she gives him money. She's still invisible.
Well, why? Why not just turn visible and pay him money instead of freaking this taxi driver out? So, by the way, the at this point the army starts chasing Johnny Storm, not knowing this flaming figure in the sky. He starts melting the jets, and they fire a nuclear missile at him, which Reed Richards' stretchy arms reach up and grab.
Yeah, just everybody in this is super careless.
Yeah, it's this is chaos. It's 8 pages of chaos is what we've had so far.
Do regular, interceptors even carry nuclear missiles? Are they allowed to shoot them at
seems unlikely.
Unidentified flying objects?
Yeah, in a city, in a major city. Yeah, crazy.
But nuts.
Yeah, it's all pretty crazy. Now, once they all arrive, we get a recap, a flashback of how they became these people with these amazing powers.
Yeah.
Okay, so what happened was there was a fear that the commies would get to space before the Americans.
Well, that they would get to the cosmic cloud first.
Oh, right. Yes. Okay. So, did they say cosmic cloud?
Something along. Tim, it's something along those lines, I think.
Well,
it's not specifically space, I think.
So I think that was just space.
Just space. Ben says, if you want to fly to the stars, then you pilot the ship. Count me out. You know we haven't done enough research into the effect of cosmic rays. They might kill us all out in space. And Sue says, Ben, we've got to take that chance unless we want the commies to beat us to it. I never thought that you would be a coward. Yeah, there doesn't seem to be anything more than let's get to space before Russia does.
They just want to beat them in the space race. Now,
Reed Richards. So this was published in, when was this published?
61.
61.
That's the same year as the first manned space flight. Yeah, close enough.
Yeah. So Reed is this big brain scientist. His brain gets bigger and bigger over the years. He becomes a real super genius by the time you get to like issue 30, 40, 50 in there. He wants this big lug, Ben Grimm, to pilot the ship, but Ben thinks it's crazy. But Sue calls Ben a coward, and that's the thing that drives him mad. He's like, I'm a coward. Nobody calls me a coward. I'm going to go to space.
Yep.
So given what happens later, this is really also very irresponsible because it ruins his life. Right? She knows that calling him a coward is going to get him to do it.
It's just like Marty McFly, You call him chicken.
Yeah.
He'll do it.
Exactly.
And it's not good for him because he turns into a big orange blob.
Yeah. So they go to their rocket station.
Well,
they sneak in.
And we should mention, why take Johnny and Sue along? Because Sue says, don't say it, Reed. I'm your fiancé. Where you go, I go. And Johnny says, and I'm tagging along with sis. So it's settled.
That's right.
And in the movie that we're going to talk about, it's no more logical than this.
No, exactly. Yeah.
Point in the movie's favor.
In this, I mean, these two people are not qualified. They're just going to space.
Yeah.
They just want to tag along.
No training, nothing else needed.
Well, it's not an official mission, so I guess it's fine because they have to actually sneak into the spaceport.
Right.
At night.
That's right. Past an armed guard. They
steal the ship, I guess.
They fly up into space, and then the ship is bathed in cosmic rays, which is something they were worried about.
Yes.
And sure enough, when they land on Earth, they crash
landing. Yep.
They crash land. They climb out, and they're all very strange. So Sue starts turning invisible, including her clothes. Mm-hmm. And Ben starts turning into this weird, like, rock monster.
Yep.
And his clothes tear off of him. His clothes don't turn into rock. He gets really angry that he's become this weird, ugly creature, and he starts attacking Reed. Also, he's jealous. He has a romantic interest in Sue, even though they're engaged, and he is constantly annoyed that her feelings for him, so his response is to attack Reed out of jealousy. Reed starts stretching like Plastic Man. He's basically a Plastic Man ripoff. He starts stretching into all sorts of weird rubbery shapes.
Yeah.
His clothes also stretch into weird rubbery shapes, by the way. Let me just point.
Poor old Ben's the only person whose clothes...
So who needs unstable molecules?
Yes, exactly. At this stage,
At this stage, I think later on the Human Torch lights up, but his clothes don't burn.
His clothes don't burn. He
later on he'll need asbestos clothes.
That's right.
Good old asbestos, safe as houses. But at this point, his clothes just don't burn up.
Yeah, so
I think he lives in a huge asbestos room eventually.
Yeah, that's the...
his lampshade's made of asbestos.
Exactly.
You know,
it's kind of how it's like the excuse for it like covers all the fire damage. Anything fire related is covered by asbestos, much like the cosmic rays just cover whatever their powers are. They've got
cosmic rays though, they're mysterious. Asbestos is a real thing.
Yes, that's true.
Also, not good for you.
Yeah.
So poor old Johnny Storm probably has emphysema.
Yeah. Yes. So all four of them have had very different reactions to these rays. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's not like uniform. They've all got very different powers. And the rest of this issue, they fight a villain called the Mole Man. I don't think we need to go too deep into this. He's this guy that wasn't he like ostracized by society?
Yeah, because he's ugly.
He's ugly, and he was ostracized, so he went to live underground, and then he just said, I'm going to go mole-themed. And he just...
This is relevant to in the movie, they wanted to have Mole Man, and they couldn't get the rights, and so they had to substitute another made-up character.
We'll talk about that when we get to it.
That's true.
It's very rough.
Incidentally, Mole Man's presence becomes known to the fore when he starts destroying nuclear power plants.
That's right.
All around the world, including in Australia, where, of course, there are no nuclear power plants.
Yes. Yes.
Issue 2 was not one of the ones you wanted to talk about, but I read like 1 through 8. I'll just say about number 2. Number 1 was their very first mission. Number 2, they're already world famous.
Right.
Word travels fast.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think Stan Lee was kind of smart about having different types of superhero groups, right? So he'd have like this famous one, and then he'd have like the X-Men that couldn't be famous, right? Like all the books were quite different thematically. So actually, we should talk about the 4 characters that are on the team a bit too, and I think they evolve pretty quickly. They get a handle on how they should be handling this group of people. So Reed, as I mentioned, is a big brain. He's older. He's got gray temples. A little bit unusual for a Marvel character. They tended to be a bit younger than the DC characters. Yeah. Sue is...
the woman?
She's the woman.
That's a type.
She sews. She takes care of the team. She's constantly bringing them tea and coffee and sandwiches. Things like that.
1961, yes.
Yeah. Later on, her power develops so she can form force fields. Like it's kind of an extension of her invisibility power. And she, of course, later she becomes known as the Invisible Woman, not Invisible Girl.
Yeah, I think that didn't change until John Byrne did it in the 80s.
Oh, really? Okay.
I'm
Okay.
pretty sure.
Okay. Okay, so Johnny is the young teenage hothead. Haha, hothead, get it?
Yes.
As we mentioned, he loves fast cars, and he loves playing pranks on Ben Grimm, the Thing. And Ben becomes, as we mentioned before, kind of very much like a Jack Kirby himself was. He even draws himself. He draws the Thing looking like himself almost in some panels later on.
Yeah.
And he's constantly annoyed, and he wants to be human again.
Yeah.
And he's angry at Reed, and Reed is constantly trying to come up with
Ways
cures.
to transform him back, yes.
And
cures.
they usually work for a few minutes and then wear off. But Reed's like, I'm not going to give up. I'll keep trying.
But he's cantankerous, sort of irascible,
Yes.
grumpy, and he's always clashing with Johnny Storm.
Yes. And
big
lots
part
of
of
other
this-
people, including the Yancey Street Gang.
Mm-hmm.
They become a kind of side character throughout the series that are like
Some
constantly.
more Jack Kirbyisms jumping in there
Yep.
with
Yep.
street gangs. Yes, this is sort of very Stan Lee because they spend half the time fighting monsters and half the time fighting one another.
Yes. Very much so.
They're very kind of dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess that was something unusual in comics in
Very much so.
1961.
Yeah.
Especially compared to like JLA, where everybody was getting along, superheroes that were all like, we're all
They're
the good
all-
guys. Yeah.
Utterly well-balanced moral paragons.
Exactly.
Da,
Exactly.
da, 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 bum. Yeah.
I suppose if we can flatter Lee a bit, one of his big contributions, I suppose, to comics is the idea of extraordinary characters having ordinary problems, like not getting on with your
Yes.
siblings.
Well, Alan Moore, ding, 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 described this very well in that he said that DC's characters were one-dimensional. They were just aunties or uncles that were all good. That was it. They were one-dimensional. And he said that Stan Lee's major breakthrough was that his characters were two-dimensional. They would be your aunties or uncles, but they would have trouble with girls or money or something like that. They would have one thing that they were struggling with. But it actually works really well for Fantastic Four. They've all got kind of one thing, and the four of them play off each other. And, by issue 5, 6, 7, 8, it's really, the wheels are turning pretty well, I think. I think the plots still don't make any sense.
No, the plots don't.
But the family dynamic is really working whenever those pages are happening.
I would agree with that. The plots are craziness. Things just happen for no reason. In the Mole Man issue, Mole Man, I think Johnny Storm and Mr. Fantastic perhaps end up in the subterranean kingdom.
Yeah.
And they pass out because of blinding light. And when they wake up, Mole Man's put them in anti-blinding light suits.
Yes. Yes.
That was how we resolved that problem.
Yes.
The Mole Man took the time to undress them. I guess he undressed them out of what they were wearing, and put this skin-tight kind of like wetsuit thing on them with a hood. That's a big job.
Yeah.
And he cared enough to do it, and then he tries to kill them straight after. I'm just reading, thinking, what the
Yes. Yes. And Sue tends to get captured a lot in these early issues.
Yes.
But she does sometimes is the one that rescues them because
It's true, she is, and we even get an issue reminding us of that.
Yes, that's right. So she tends to turn visible again, or turn invisible and then get away from the bad guy and rescue the team. But her other thing is she tends to fall in love with people like Namor, even though she's engaged. And anytime anybody handsome comes along, she's like, "Ooh, this guy."
Oh dear. Oh dear.
And it's kind of typically like that. I'll remember some other Sue bits as we go along. They're usually quite bizarre.
Speaking of bizarre, Tim, did you read the Miracle Man issue?
Yes. What is that? 3?
Yes, issue 3, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that one. I think I had read 1 through 6 a long time ago. My brother and I had the pocketbook edition. I think it was 1 through 6. Because number 7 was, I read number 7, that was completely new to me. But yeah, anyway.
This one I love because it was all a dream almost. is how this one's summed up, right? There's this character, Miracle Man. He's performing on stage. He can do anything, any miracle. I guess,
Right.
we would call him a reality warper in modern kind of like power parlance. He could become impervious to harm. He could turn a giant key into a machine gun. He can animate an enormous statue made of paper mache and wood to go rampaging through the streets. And kind of at the end, Stan Lee decides that he did it all with hypnosis.
Right.
So you just imagined it all.
Yeah.
And Reed's like, I figured it out. And I'm like, you figured it out, huh? Did he hypnotize a crowd at one point?
Yeah.
They all thought they saw this paper mache monster. Did you hypnotize Ben Grimm into pulling his punch when he hits Miracle Man in the face?
Yeah. Yeah, none of it makes any sense. However, issue 3 also brings us the Fantastic Car, which is this vehicle that they fly around in that becomes a fixture of the series.
It has telepathic controls.
Yes, right. And Sue also creates the outfits for the team in this issue. So, again, the team, as we know it, in the present day, is starting to take shape at this point. Issue 5 is our Doctor Doom issue. Right. We're introduced to the character of Doctor Doom, who we learn was a old university classmate of Reed's, who became interested in the dark arts and magic, and was doing some sort of experiment and like blew himself up and scarred his face. So now he wears this mask. And he lives in a castle. We don't know much more about that in this issue. Many years later, we learned that he's actually king of this country called Latveria.
Yes. Amazing.
Yeah, and he kidnaps the Fantastic Four and Reed recognizes his voice and forces them to go back in time to steal Blackbeard's treasure.
I love this.
So I was kind of surprised by this because a few months ago I watched the whole 90s Fantastic Four cartoon.
Okay.
And this is a story that they adopted for the cartoon.
Okay.
It's like, I remember this.
Was it just as bonkers? Did they arrive in
pretty much
17th century Caribbean, and nearby there were some pirates that have just done a big clothes heist?
This issue's bizarre.
So they can grab outfits straight away because there's two pirates squabbling about how they're going to divide up the loot from the big clothes robbery they've just performed.
Yeah.
I stole these clothes, ye swab.
What I was really
nice one, Stan.
Struck by was how much they could cram in one issue when they did such compressed storytelling. I mean,
that's true.
Reading the early Amazing Spider-Man stuff for the Patreon show, but still, like, wow, they got this whole story into one issue.
You're right. A lot happens. Dr. Doom, as you say, he arrives at the tower. He traps them in the tower. He outsmarts them. He takes Sue hostage. With Sue hostage, he forces them to board the helicopter, where he then flies them to his castle. Where is his castle? I guess it's somewhere in the US.
It seems to be.
Much like Doom in the movie's castle.
Yeah, it's who knows
He then
where.
announces he has a time machine. He's going to send them back. He wants them to steal Blackbeard's jewels. They go back in time. They steal the clothes off the squabbling pirates. They find Blackbeard, or do they? They find who they think is Blackbeard, but then it turns out the Thing is Blackbeard. The Thing decides to stay in the past. Then a typhoon hits, his ship sinks, he changes his mind. Before they go back to the present, Reed says, well, I'm not going to give Doom these jewels because if he wanted them, that's bad.
The jewels are all lost anyway in the storm. They ended up on the bottom of the ocean.
There's something funny
he
here
doesn't
about
throw them? Oh, yeah, you're right, of course.
When they leave, when they go back in time, they agree to this mission because they've got Sue hostage.
Yeah.
They say, okay, we'll get the treasure. Fine. They say this twice.
Yeah.
When they arrive in the past, they decide to swap out chains into the jewels. They figure there's something powerful in the jewels.
Yeah. Well, Reed says, if Doom wants them, that's reason enough for me not to give them.
Yeah.
In which case, I think I see where you're going, Kumar. But why did they try and get them in the first place?
Wait. But he says...
why didn't they just hang out in Tortuga?
Reed says, we promised we'd bring the treasure chest. We never said treasure. I flipped back. He does say treasure twice.
Yeah.
Not the chest, huh?
He did not
And
mention the chest. They never mentioned the chest.
No.
Also, Dr. Doom gives him 48 hours. I don't understand why. Why doesn't he just... It's time travel. They can put him back there for 10 years and then just bring them back to 24 hours later, 48 hours later.
When they're old and decrepit.
Yeah, or 10 minutes later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe it's one of those... Yeah, exactly. It doesn't make any sense. Maybe it's one of those conceits where time passes in the future.
It's really interesting to me that Jack wanted the credit for the story.
Maybe it's like the Valiant comic universe where it's in real time.
Yes. Yeah, it all takes place in real time. It's crazy to me that Jack really fought for credit on these. Well, not crazy, but I mean, because the family dynamics is working, but these stories are
bonkers. Don't
add up at all.
Dumb. Why would they even go for why did they even try to find the jewels if Reed had no intention of ever giving the jewels to Doom anyway? Like they could have just sat where they landed and waited the 48 hours.
That's true. Yep.
They could have just found a treasure chest nearby.
Yeah.
It's just
they're just lying around. They're just treasure chests everywhere in that time and place. So
yeah, exactly. They go back. Doom opens the chest. Surprise, surprise! It's chains. The Fantastic Four haven't even left yet. So he's like, "Well, you guys are screwed. I'm going to suck all the oxygen out of this room." Also, he's a Doom bot.
That's right. Introduction of the Doom bot. Yeah.
He starts sucking the air out of the room. Sue has to come down and rescue them. They blow up his castle. This is all one issue.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Issue 8 introduces us to the Puppet Master and his stepdaughter, Alicia Masters.
Yeah, I did not know she was a stepdaughter. In
I didn't know that
later comics,
either.
they always just said daughter.
Maybe it's been retconned. Maybe she really was his daughter.
Well, she calls him father.
Yes,
and
that's
he
right.
says, "Call me father. I'm only your stepfather," which is something no one's ever said. But perhaps she wants him to be her father, so perhaps that's the version that she remembers in the future.
So this Puppet Master guy is a guy who found some radioactive clay. Radiation, again, in Marvel Universe, just does everything.
Yep. Yeah.
He's found some radioactive clay, and if he molds people into if he molds the clay into the shape of a person, he can control that person. How does this work? How does the clay know? How does the clay know what person it has been shaped into?
Exactly. Don't ever
mind
think
blowing. Absolutely mind blowing. So anyway, he's going to test this for the first time. So he makes a guy climb up a bridge, and he's going to make this guy jump to his death. Johnny Storm comes up, he flies by and grabs a guy with his hands on fire. This guy is unharmed by Johnny grabbing him by fire. That's weird. Okay.
We get a page in the next issue explaining how that happened. Because he instinctively turns off his fire when he touches human skin.
Oh, okay.
Well, actually, it's a page that's just inserted in the issue here.
Oh, it's the same issue. Okay.
Fantastic Four feature page. Just kind of breaks into the story.
Right. Oh, yeah. Explaining how his powers work.
I see, okay. This is also the page that explains that he can create a supernova fireball. Which is, how do they know that he can do this? Has he done this? Because our solar system would not exist anymore if he created a supernova out of his hands. Maybe Reed just figured this out from his DNA. He knows the potential of it. I don't know.
I mean, they made up the characters, so he can do anything they want him to do.
So, because Johnny saved this guy, Puppet Master's angry and wants to kill Johnny. So for revenge, he carves a sculpture of the thing that he can control. Why doesn't he carve Johnny?
Yep.
Instead, he makes the thing come to his house, and he figures out that his daughter, Alicia, looks just like Sue Storm, because Sue shows up invisible. And he's like, okay, I'm going to disguise you as Sue Storm, and you're going to go over there with the thing, and they're going to let you into the base. Now, 2 questions. Why would you disguise your blind daughter as a woman with sight? That's like a bad plan. Mm-hmm. Also, why do they need Sue to get into the base? Can't Thing just go home?
They've already got the Thing, and in fact, the Thing takes her back.
Yeah.
While still under the control of the Puppet Master. There's no reason for him to do that. Also, one more thing, Kumar. He then makes a doll of Sue.
Yeah.
And of course, we've established that you make a doll that looks exactly like the person, and that's how you control it. Alicia looks exactly like Sue and is dressed exactly like Sue.
So how does the
doll know the difference?
How does the clay know which one is the real Sue? Yes. Great question. Then he he forms a puppet of the warden, not the warden of the prison, but like
the trustee of the warden.
The trustee of the warden? Why not just form a puppet of the warden to steal a key out of his desk?
And we only ever see the trustee's hand. We don't even know what the guy looks like.
No. Very strange. So, I don't know. He wants a prison riot to happen. I can't remember his reason for that.
Me neither. Oh, well.
Yeah, I don't remember. But in the end,
it's not important. He just wants to create chaos. He's evil.
Yes. So after the big fight and after they stop the prison break, the puppet master has made a puppet of himself as a king.
Well, first hang on, Kumar, you've missed some crazy stuff.
Okay.
So first of all, he's made a giant puppet.
Yes.
That he controls. So hang on.
Oh, that's right.
How does this work? Did he make the giant puppet out of the radioactive clay? Or did he make a smaller puppet of the giant puppet out of the radioactive clay? In which case, where did the giant puppet come from?
Yes.
And you can control inanimate objects now?
Yes, he also has a flying horse. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the next crazy thing. He has a jet-powered flying horse.
Right.
What's the story with this horse? Can he just build a jet-powered flying horse? In that case, why is he fucking around with radioactive clay?
Yeah.
You're a roboticist of superlative ability. Just make robots.
He found the clay. He found the clay. He's not going to not use the clay. He found this magic clay.
He also can't make up his mind because with the horse he says it's my greatest puppet of all, and then a few pages later he's got a different greatest puppet of all. Like they're all the greatest.
Yeah. Well, the best bit is that he makes a puppet of himself. Would you ever make a voodoo doll of yourself?
Exactly.
That's
to somehow make himself king. Somehow the puppet of himself is going to make himself. Why not? You just make yourself king.
He's just made it.
I don't get it.
He hasn't even made it to make himself king. He's just made it for fun.
For fun.
So this is what he's made it out of radioactive clay.
He stupidly made it out of his magic clay. So when it falls on the ground, he trips over Alicia's hand, which the other people didn't have to have an EC Comics horror type solution for this. Like they would just fall over if the doll fell over.
He got monkey pawed.
But he trips over her hand as if it's a curse.
And then he goes out the window.
Comic, and then he falls out the window to his death.
Except he's back later.
Does he come back later, does he?
Of course he does.
This is not the end of the Puppet Master by any means.
And Alicia becomes a major, like the romantic figure for the Thing.
Yeah, they're married in current continuity, yeah.
And I think maybe there's like a bit of jealousy with Johnny as well, like maybe Ben thinks that she's interested in Johnny, or she is interested in Johnny.
Ooh, boy.
I can't remember.
I feel like there was a period when she was dating Johnny. There was also a period where she was dating the Silver Surfer, but then they put her back together with Thing.
Ugh, comics. Oh, well.
Okay, well, I just want to mention were there any other issues up to number 8 that you wanted to mention, Tim? So they also have this building called the Baxter Building, which appeared in issue 3, which is like a super high-tech.
And I noticed
it already had. You spotted this too, Tim? Go ahead.
We only saw the name on the side of the building. Nobody ever said Baxter Building.
Okay, right.
Is that what you were thinking, Jordan? Or
I was thinking that it already has it has 4s on it before they've even decided that they're the Fantastic Four.
Ah, well, yeah.
When they fly out of it in the Fantastic Car, I think it has 4.
That's in the movie.
It's in the comics as well.
In the movie, yeah.
But they're already called the Fantastic Four by issue 3.
Oh, because the thing he shoots in the air.
He shot that thing in the air, and they were the Fantastic Four.
Oh yeah, in that first issue, it says Fantastic Four, like 2 words.
Yeah.
And I think he decided that's not a realistic thing for a flare gun to shoot into the air. So after that, it's just a 4 with a circle around it.
Even in the same issue, it's just a 4 with a circle around it.
Well, I don't know. Realism is not a concern here. I think it's just that it takes up too much space.
Yeah.
Issue. Oh, sorry, Tim.
I didn't need to say anything about the others. Well, we do have an appearance from Namor. He's reintroduced to the Marvel Universe and briefly teams up with Doctor Doom.
Okay, right. So issue 11 breaks the fourth wall, and the Fantastic Four address the readers. Now, in an early issue, number 5, the Doom issue, Johnny is reading a Hulk comic at one stage.
I knew you were going to mention this. I have to tell you, Tim, whenever the comic appears in the comic, it flips some kind of switch in Kumar's brain. He just can't handle it. He short circuits.
Yeah. Well, they did this a lot in the early Marvels, where there was a company called Marvel Comics that was making comics about these heroes that lived in the world, if you know what I mean. So there are Fantastic Four comics in the world of the Fantastic Four universe, and the Hulk comics in that world. That's been established. We even meet Stan and Jack in one issue at some stage.
Right.
So in this issue 11, there's a story where the readers are addressed. They get reader fan mail from readers, and they address them. And one of the letters is about how Sue is useless. So she breaks down into tears about this.
Of course.
And Reed has to say how
they both do.
Abraham Lincoln's mother. Abe mentioned that. Abe, remember his famous remark about his mother? The time he said that all he'd ever hoped to be, he owed to her. So Reed's point is that yes, Sue is useless in a fight, but she's an inspiration to us, like Abraham Lincoln's mother, and that's why she's worthy of being on the team.
Sort of downing with faint praise. But then Ben Grimm goes on to mention all the times that she rescues them with her invisibility powers. And then he says, if you want to see broad scrapping, go watch the wrestling.
That's right.
Wrestling.
That's right.
It's actually a pretty good line.
Yes.
Yeah, I see. If you readers want to see women fighting all the time, then go see lady wrestlers.
Yes.
That's actually a pretty good line. Much better than Reed's one about Lincoln's mother, honestly.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we've kind of covered the main thing is the dynamics of the team.
Yep.
I think more than the stories and maybe the points of the origins of the characters.
We get a bit of their background in issue 11 as well, where they talk about how Ben was a fighter pilot in the Second World War.
That's right.
Reed Richards was in OSS, or whatever the American equivalent was. And yeah, but that's not as important as you say, the fact that they're a squabbling kind of nuclear family.
Yeah.
And also we've covered a few important story beats.
Yes.
Which are going to crop up in our film, which we will discuss.
Yes. Also, many years later, I think it's like in the 90s, we were finally told what Sue's PhD was. We don't know anything about her education at this stage, but much later on, that stuff is covered.
Coming up, we begin our review of the 1994 FF movie, assuming we can figure out what's going on amidst all the dimly lit sets and garbled dialogue. And don't forget that you can help this podcast by making your Amazon purchases via deconstructingcomics.com/Amazon. Follow the link to Amazon from there and make that your bookmark for future purchases. We'll then get a percentage of what you spend. It costs you nothing extra and helps us cover web hosting and the other costs of presenting this show every week. We really appreciate your support. Holy continuation! In the latest edition of Bat Bits, we attempt to come up with some guidelines for what makes a good Holy. Also, just because a Holy was used on Batman 66, does that make it a good one? Join us on Patreon for at least $2 a month to hear Bat Bits, as well as ad-free versions of future To the Batpoles episodes. And by the way, there will be a new edition of To the Batpoles in early December, right here in this feed. To hear that episode ad-free, as well as to catch all episodes of Bat Bits, go to patreon.com/deconcomics.
Okay, so we're going to get to this movie, which for years I called the Roger Corman Fantastic Four, and we even did at the top of this episode, but so it's not really Roger Corman.
It's produced by him, but not directed.
But I did want to point out that we had several animated versions of Fantastic Four before this, but they were all very short-lived. So 1967, Hanna-Barbera, that was 20 episodes. 1978, the Freeling Company did 13 episodes, only 13.
With Herbie the Robot, yes.
That's right, yeah, instead of Johnny Storm.
94, we had 26 episodes, presumably to tie in with the movie. I'm guessing this was produced.
Perhaps, I'm not sure why.
And then we had a 2006 version, and that was only 26. It's very hard even to get an animated series out of a really great comics property. This should be easy. This should be going gangbusters. It is awesome characters all around. It's Jack Kirby full throttle by the time you get to issue 30 or 40. I mean, this should be easy. I don't understand why they're struggling so much. There was another version, which is the one I remember first, which was the Fred Flintstone Thing Happy Hour or something. It was Saturday morning, 13 episodes, 1979, so I would have been 5 years old. But this one didn't have the Fantastic Four. It only had the Thing, and he was a kid who had these magic rings, and he would slam them together and say, "Thing ring, do your thing." So, in fact, the word "thing" and "thing" were the rhyme. The rhyme was "thing" and "thing." Thing ring, do your thing. And and all these rocks would fly in and attach to him.
I forgot about that. I don't think I ever watched it. I just heard about it and didn't want to watch it.
I absolutely watched that. It was probably my first exposure to the Fantastic Four, unless they were on the Merry Marble Marching Society. But yeah, almost definitely that was my first exposure.
Right. That 1990s Fantastic Four cartoon series, definitely not made to coincide with the film. I think it came out a year later.
Oh, okay.
And probably following on from the success of the X-Men cartoons of the early 90s. Yeah. By that point, the conspiracy, quote unquote, to bury this film was well underway, and it definitely wouldn't have had anything to do with the film.
Okay. So we've got this movie directed by Ole Sassoon.
Ole Sassoon, yep.
Mostly TV director.
He did a lot of music videos in the 70s and 80s, apparently quite successfully.
Right.
So not the first director we've discussed who began with music videos and moved on to comic book movies, Kumar.
Right. Written by a fellow named Craig Nevius, who was the mastermind behind a TV show called Black Scorpion, which is like the sexy superhero lady kind of TV show. So I guess it's kind of in his wheelhouse, this kind of material.
Yeah, and then there's a second writer credited, Kevin Rock. I suppose he did some rewrites or something.
Yeah, it could be. Hard to imagine somebody rewrote this.
It's fine. It's workmanlike.
Especially since they probably had a weekend to do it. You're really going to spend another weekend handing it to somebody else?
I think the script is not the worst thing about it. For me, my two biggest complaints were bad miking of the actors and bad lighting. So much of it is dark. Like, what is going on in the...
Well, yeah.
Partly I think because we've got a bad copy, even the one that's been cleaned up, the one we watched. And as for the miking, there was no looping.
No, that's right.
On this movie, because by that point, depends on how deep we're going to go and at what point. But this movie didn't get a proper post-production. The money stopped coming.
But yeah, even the people who aren't wearing masks is kind of hard to make out what they're saying.
Oh yeah, the audio quality is poor.
Part of that is the version we have, but also I would say the lighting is probably deliberately dark to cover up bad sets and effects and stuff like that.
Because it was shot at the famous Venice Studios in California, Roger Corman studio, which at that point was a condemned building.
With rats, yes.
With rats crawling around the sound matting, and a single cat called Lucy in charge of keeping the rats down. Apparently, the fire wardens had literally condemned the building, and according to the, I think the casting director or someone in charge of interviewed in the documentary Doomed, which I also watched, he said that they kept a door open at all times because on the reverse of the door was a notice saying this building has been condemned. So yes, I imagine they kept the light low to make the Thing's costume look better.
Yeah.
And I must say that whenever the Thing's costume is shot in low light, it looks pretty bloody good.
Yeah, I think the animatronics in the face and stuff are pretty impressive. Probably where most of the money went.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. The lips were actually moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The face is expressive. It's pretty good. Maybe the best thing about the movie.
I think so. I really love the Thing in this.
Yeah.
I think it's my favorite
thing. I think, maybe to jump way ahead, I actually think the actors are pretty well cast. Like that actor, the actor that was playing the Ben Grimm version looked like Ben Grimm. Like that kind of rock jaw. Reed was very handsome. Sue was very beautiful. Alicia was very beautiful.
Oh yeah, I'm crushing on her now. Yeah, Rebecca Staub.
Oh yeah, that actor Rebecca Staub, who played Sue Storm, you will not be surprised to hear, is a former model and a Miss Nebraska.
Ooh.
Huh.
And the
Okay.
guy that played Ben Grimm, name of Alex Hyde White. Apparently, Stan Lee would frequent the set
Wait,
a
Alex
lot.
was
Oh no, sorry,
the
that's Reed Richards. Sorry,
yeah.
I apologize. It's Michael Bailey Smith
Okay.
is the guy that played the Thing.
Well,
Okay.
Ben
well,
Grimm, rather, not the
well,
Thing.
yeah, Ben
Because
Grimm, but not the Thing. Yeah.
correct. Apparently, Stan Lee would hang around the set a lot.
Huh.
This is true for a film that Stan Lee later disowned
Yeah.
and spoke very negatively about at the time. Apparently, he had nothing better to do than visit the set a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well,
Hyde White said that he even brought donuts one time.
right. Well,
And
speaking of the
well,
Stan
sorry,
Lee.
Kumar. He said
sorry,
that,
go ahead, go ahead.
you'll like this, Kumar. This will
Okay.
tickle your funny bone. He apparently said to Michael Bailey Smith that you are who I was thinking of when I invented the Thing.
Ha, ha, ha. Oh boy. Oh
Landed
wow,
on
that's
pretty
a whole
thick.
podcast on its own.
Wow,
Wow,
make you laugh.
Okay.
Well, shall we talk about the story?
Yeah,
in
so
the
first I
movie?
need to mention the credits.
Okay.
Because there is no mention of Marvel Comics, Stan Lee, or Jack Kirby in the opening credits or the end credits. At the very end, we get Fantastic Four copyright Marvel Comics, which
noticed
was
that.
very strange to me because at this point in time, the Batman movies are still making money. Why wouldn't you advertise that you were based on a comic book, a Marvel comic book?
Mhm.
And as you know, the X-Men cartoon is probably going off at this stage. Why not just admit to that? It's very strange in the credits.
I agree.
Yeah. What do you think about the theme
And it's
music?
very rare to see this. Sorry, just a second. It's very rare to see this. Pretty much every movie that we've reviewed, all, like 107 of them, have almost always acknowledged in some way, shape, or form what they're based on.
Yeah.
So sometimes they will be very, especially pre-1989, they will be very shy about saying that they're based on a comic book. They'll kind of dance around it. They'll say story, based on a story by, or based on the graphic novel, or based on the property,
Yeah.
or the creation.
Yeah. Based on characters created by.
Yeah, based on characters created by, yes. But almost always, to the point that I imagine it's a contractual obligation that you have to acknowledge the original source. That's why it's so strange that in this case it hasn't, except at the very, very end of the credits.
Yeah.
Bit of a puzzler.
What do you make of the music, good or bad?
I was surprised at the quality, actually. I was like, did they
Okay.
get John Williams for this? They didn't, but
I think I was
It
going to
was scored-
say they ripped off John Williams, but John Williams also famously just ripped off all his riffs from other people anyway.
This is a good score.
So
I was
it's
watching
fair.
the movie and my wife was nearby and she said, "Oh, that's really nice. I'm really enjoying the piano."
Okay, good.
And my
Yeah.
wife is a musician, so
Okay, good.
it's
music
pretty
by
good.
David Wurst and Eric Wurst.
Yes.
Yes,
and the
brothers.
documentary says they spend a lot of their own money to hire like a 40-piece orchestra to record this.
Correct. They spent $6,000 of their own money
Ugh.
Wow.
in order to get the music finished
Wow.
because they were that passionate. And they're not the only people to spend their own money on this movie.
Right.
Okay, so we start at a university. Reed Richards is in the class. He's sitting next to Ben Grimm. There's a teacher. The professor is talking about this comet that's coming by called the Colossus. Does it only come by once every 10 years? Does he
Every
say
10 years.
Yeah,
Okay.
a radioactive comet-like energy source traveling in 10-year orbits that tonight will
Okay.
be the closest to Earth that it will ever come.
Okay.
Except in 10 years when it's just as close, apparently.
So Reed's classmate Victor is sitting behind him. They're working on designs for some sort of rocket.
Significantly,
Same
Victor
experiment?
doesn't seem to have a last name.
No.
No, he
That's
doesn't.
an important
right.
point. It's
Most
a very
important.
important point. He doesn't have a last name. Oh, no, he's Victor Vaughn. His last name is Vaughn. Like, I'm guessing it's Vaughn. Like,
Okay.
Like Vince Vaughn?
Did
Yeah, like Vince
did they ever say that?
I think they do at some stage. My old classmate Victor Vaughn.
It's hard to make it out in the dialogue, but
And they seem to be. It's not so much a rocket as it's some sort of antenna or device to draw down the power of Colossus.
It's separate experiments. It's very confusing. There's two experiments going on. There's like a rocket experiment and there's an energy experiment. I think.
Oh, is there a rocket experiment? I thought that was.
Reed
I don't know.
and Victor.
They're passing designs back and forth, and I'm not sure what the designs are.
I think they're talking about the device that we see them using later to draw the energy from Colossus.
Okay, so they have this experiment going to draw this energy down from Colossus. Reed doesn't think it's ready. Victor, in classic hubris scientist mode, is like, no, it's going to work, and we're going to do it tonight. This is our chance.
And there's no time. So
he promises Reed they'll run just one more set of simulations, but then goes back on his promise because, as you say, he's got that classic Doctor Doom hubris.
Yeah.
He can't be wrong.
Yes. So they draw down the power. Of course, the machine explodes. Victor is zapped with all sorts of energy from Colossus. I actually thought they were all going to get their powers in this moment. Because a lot of superhero movies do tie the origins together these days.
Yeah. Well, but in fact, they do that. They've done that with both more recent iterations of Doctor Doom's origins.
But at this point, Sue and Johnny are kids. So
that's true. Good point.
Kids. Yes.
Yep. In fact, they visit Mrs. Storm's boarding house.
Yes.
As it says on the sign out the front.
Reed is living there, I guess. He says, I came home to get something.
Yes.
Yes, he is living there. And
little Sue's like 12, 13 years old. She has a mad crush on Reed, who's
we get some delightful Frank Miller-esque preteen crushing on an older male here.
Yeah. Now, there's something I want to point out about this scene, because this actress looked very familiar to me, who plays young Sue.
Yes.
She is an actress named Mercedes McNabb, who was on Buffy the Vampire Slayer as the preppy girl. But then I looked her up, and she's actually in both Addams Family movies as different characters. She is the girl guide that tries to sell cookies to Wednesday.
Are they made from real Girl Scouts?
Yes, that's her.
Yes. Yeah. Mercedes McNabb. Yes, I spotted that. So now she's been in 2 Comic Book Movie Oblivion films. Not an all-star yet, but she's on the way.
She's on the way. And also the guy that played Reed, what was his name?
Alex Hyde White.
Yeah, so he's going to hit 3 because he was in Captain America, the second Captain America TV movie, which someday we will cover.
That's right. So I guess we're jumping into Comic Book Movie Oblivion early, All-Stars early. As you pointed out, Alex Hyde White, who played Reed, he was in Captain America 2, Death Too Soon, the 1979 TV movie in which he played Young Man.
Huh.
And he's also in The Adventures of Tintin, which we will eventually get into.
And I was interested that his father was Wilfred Hyde White, who I only knew because some months ago I found out about the 1979 sitcom The Associates that he was in. Okay. It was the first TV series appearance for Martin Short. Huh. He was one of the stars of that show.
Okay. Wow. Yes, I think both Alex Hyde White and one of the other actors both had famous actors.
Joseph Culp, who played Victor Von Doom, was the son of Robert Culp.
Thank you.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so there's a big explosion. Victor's getting all burned up. We see his face get all burned up.
He has a
typical
great,
supervillain origin kind of thing. Yeah.
And then he takes a breath and some more.
Yes. Yes. And he is presumed dead. Right?
Well, not quite. They take him to the hospital.
Yes.
Ben runs in and saves him.
Yeah.
Gets burned in the process. They take him to the hospital, and then 2 very suspicious doctors tell Reed that I am sorry, he passed away from his burns. I am taking him to the morgue now.
Yeah.
This guy's accent, I love it.
I had a question here.
Yeah.
So
I have a lot of questions.
Those 2 doctors, I have a lot of questions. They turn out to be Doom's henchmen later, but we see them on the college campus playing chess before the Colossus comes.
Yes.
And why are they there? Does Victor have henchmen before he's Dr. Doom?
Why do they have to declare Victor dead?
Well,
why does he have to be
that's
dead?
The real question. I figured they were just keeping tabs on him. They were from wherever he's from.
From Castlemania.
Why not just say, he's alive? He's alive.
From Castlemania. He's from Transylvania.
He's fine. Let's heal. Let's give him some bandages and take him home. Why do they have to say pretend he's dead?
This is a really good question. Why? And also, if he's been very badly, if you need to rest, they say we need to revive him. We need to hurry. So if you need to revive a person that's been badly burned, is taking him out of the hospital the best plan?
Yeah. For some, I don't get it.
Wild. Well, he needs to be. They need to think he's dead so he can make his dramatic comeback.
Did he break the law or something, and they need to keep him out of jail? I don't get it. Okay,
his handlers, they've just decided he's better off back in the home country of America because his castle clearly is in America.
Yeah.
Seems to be.
Pennsylvania. Oh.
Well, later on, there's a really hard to make out line where he apparently says where he's from, but I couldn't even make out some of it.
Huh.
Oh, it's just some of that very muffled dialogue that Joseph needs to come back and do in ADR, which he is willing to do, as he states in the documentary. He's just waiting for that call.
Yeah.
And then I did go in to do the looping because I knew, we were going to have to record Doom's speeches and a lot of it to really create a sound. And Ole was on another gig, and I talked to him on the phone. And he said, well, the stuff that we really need, we're going to get, but I really like the sound of your voice in the mask. And when I came to the looping session and I heard it, and I went, oh no, the sound of the mask is not good. I said, no, we should do the whole thing.
I had such a unbearable hatred for you, Rick.
And they didn't have the pages for everything, and they weren't planning on recording everything.
Look at it! See it!
I don't know. That was a judgment call that I never agreed with, and I do regret that the film, as we do see it now, has those sound issues, and it's not lost on anybody. There are times when Doom sounds perfectly lucid, and then there are these shots where it's like, you hear him like, and you can't hear what he's saying. And I've always been annoyed at that, and I will continue to be until we fix it.
He, just this year, in fact, started a change.org petition. This is Joseph Kolb.
Okay.
In March of this year, urging Disney to release this movie, or at least acknowledge it in some way, shape, or form.
Right.
So he's one of the cast members, one of the people involved in the film that's never given up on the idea that it should be released.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that they could use this as kind of a promo for the upcoming movie.
The actors in the documentary say over and over, why not just release it?
Yeah.
People will buy it.
It's like
how people say, why doesn't George Lucas just release the original trilogy unedited? People will buy it because there's more going on than just money here.
Batwoman. What about the Warner Brothers Batwoman that they completed, edited, finished, and then did not release?
I want to talk about Batwoman, but we're going to return, the mystery of why this film was never released is interesting, and we will discuss it.
Okay. So now we cut to 10 years later. I was shocked when this came up on screen.
Me too.
But then I shouldn't have been, because we knew that Sue Storm was a little girl in the opening scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now Reed has gray hair.
He's gone prematurely gray, I would say, because he was a university student in before the 10-year skip.
Yeah, or maybe he was a grad student. We don't know.
I hope he's not that old because Sue's like 12 years old.
Yeah.
I really don't. I really need him to be like early 20s.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. That is what we prefer, given the age difference and how long he's known her.
I don't think it would go over well now.
No.
It's 30 years ago.
My headcanon is she's like maybe 24 and he's 29.
Yeah, let's hope so.
Prematurely gray. That's my headcanon. You can't take this from me.
Yeah. So he is building a rocket. I'm not sure why. I think the comet's coming back around because it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
He is building this rocket. He wants Ben to pilot it. They're like, we need 2 more people on our crew. They go over to the
boarding house.
The boarding house.
Yep.
And they recruit these, as Tim said earlier, they just walk in like, hey, join us. We're going to go into space.
They ask their mom, ask Johnny and Sue's mom, can Johnny and Sue come with us to space or whatever it is?
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what Ben Grimm says.
Hi, Mrs. Storm. Can Johnny and Susan go to outer space with us?
And then Reed is having
Reed's
second thoughts. He's telling Johnny, like, maybe you shouldn't. And then Sue shows up, and Sue's gorgeous, so she has to come with us.
Yes.
Yeah, that's exactly what happens. In my notes, I've got, take this hot chick to space.
Yes. Yes.
She's gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, Ole Sessa, he's done a good job of photographing her. Like, he really knew what he was doing.
And we get the title drop. It's Mrs. Storm.
Yeah.
She says, look at you for the Fantastic Four.
Yes.
We've got some lovely sort of schmaltzy music.
It's very much like the Donner Superman scene where Lois Lane is like, what is Superman? Superman. It's a bit like that.
Yeah, or like we don't talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, but there's a similar scene in that where it's sort
or
of
Han Solo.
Ponderous.
Yeah. Okay, so it's very difficult to tell what's going on here.
Are they going to go to space? But we need to go look at your diamond.
Reed and Ben have this giant diamond in a suitcase. That they're taking into, I guess, the building where they work.
This is the biggest diamond to ever exist.
It's huge, just like the size of your head. And they go into this building. Meanwhile, and when they go in, Ben accidentally bumps into this blind woman. And she's carrying a statue that she's molded, and it smashes on the floor.
Yep.
And she's very upset.
She's upset, and to make her less upset, he decides to manhandle her.
Yes. And then she says...
He just physically grabs her. This is a blind person. He grabs her, picks her up, I think sort of hugs her for a bit, and then plonks her down and says, "You're all right, baby. I've got you."
Yeah. And then
I've written, Ben assaults a blind woman.
She touches his face, and she says, "I can sense you're a good person."
Yeah, lucky.
And then they walk away.
Yep.
She walks away. She leaves her broken statue. They go upstairs. That's it. I don't think they didn't even get each other's names in this.
Yeah, and then Ben says it's hard to hear. They're by this echoey stairwell, but Ben says, like, "I'm in love," and then he's talking with Reed about that as they're going up the stairs. Well, if you're in love with her, why don't you go ask her out?
Why don't you go get a number, maybe?
Yep.
Just let her go. Just let her walk up with the shattered remains of the statue.
Meanwhile, there's a character that I thought was the Mole Man is observing Alicia Masters from a hole in the wall.
No, first he's here. I think he's here to see the diamond.
Yeah, he goes on going after the diamond first. He comes out of a manhole, and we know that it was supposed to be the Mole Man, but they didn't
we don't
have the rights.
learn who this character is for 40 minutes. We're not given a name. I assumed it was the Mole Man for 40 minutes of the movie.
Of course. Of course, but as Tim pointed out earlier, this isn't the Mole Man.
Right.
The option that was purchased, that Constantin, ding-a-ding, New Constantin Pictures picked up in the early 80s, didn't cover the Mole Man. Instead, it's just the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, and the Silver Surfer. Okay. Because, as they point out in Doom, the documentary, and also Common Sense, if you purchase the option for Fantastic Four, you get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of characters.
Right.
Just about everybody's been in Fantastic Four at some point, right?
Right.
So it specifically says, you can have these 3, or 7 characters, and that's it. Anyway, as Tim points out, supposed to be the Mole Man, but we can't call him that, so he's called the Jeweler.
So he sees Alicia for the first time in this scene and then falls in love with her, but he was already here for the diamond. Okay. Is
there something about Alicia? Clearly, because both Ben Grimm and the Jeweler have both fallen for her after having seen her for about 3 seconds.
Oh, again, this movie's full of attractive people, and she's just another one of them.
Okay.
So Ben and Reed go up to their lab, which is in this just building, I think. And they load the diamond into the...
I'm not sure if this is even the lab or if it's just a separate space where they're keeping this insanely expensive diamond that's
I don't know, but they have the most
countries.
They have this laser grid, which they set up to protect the diamond. But it's down close to the ground, and the lasers are not invisible. You can see them. So when the jeweler, the Mole Man jeweler, shows up, he just steps between the cracks. Anyone can do it.
Not just steps. He does a skippy little dance. We have some very lighthearted music.
I thought he was a leprechaun character. I was like, he's not the Mole Man. He's some sort of leprechaun character. We still don't know he's a jeweler at this stage of the movie.
He's got a jeweler's lens.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yes,
that lets
right.
him see the lasers.
But we can see the lasers as the audience.
Yes, we can see the lasers because we're the audience, right?
Okay.
My head canon, Kumar.
Yeah.
You can't prove it's not true.
Yeah. Okay. So meanwhile, this is all being observed on a monitor by Dr. Doom,
who has also instructed his two henchmen, the same henchmen,
to steal.
bumbling henchmen, who
Yeah.
stole him from a hospital when he had third-degree burns over his whole body.
Yeah.
That was a great.
So now
time.
we've got two factions after this diamond, and we've got two romances. And this is a 90-minute movie. It's actually an 85-minute movie.
Yeah, brilliant.
All this is happening at the same time.
It's jam-packed like a 1961 comic.
It sure is. And the jeweler / mole man / leprechaun comes in and swaps the diamond out, much like Indiana Jones. He has an identical one. Identical giant.
He's got an
rock.
exactly the same, but made presumably of plastic.
How? I guess he's an expert jeweler.
Well,
That's a superpower.
I'm assuming this diamond must be a known quantity. It must be the biggest diamond that's ever been found, ever.
Right.
I guess he knows about it, and he's made a perfect simulacrum. Anyway, Doom watching
How did
this
Reed
says,
get it? Did you explain how a
Nope.
grad student got this?
He's
world's
not a
biggest
grad
diamond?
student anymore. He's now a successful
Remember, this
industrial.
is 10
that's
years
true.
later.
He lives in
That's
this
true.
flash pad.
Oh,
and
okay.
he's rich.
Okay.
Anyway, it might have been explained during some dialogue that we couldn't hear.
Oh, yes, this is. So Dr. Doom, here we go. He's a bit like Dr. Claw. We only see his hands like in the Inspector Gadget cartoon.
Yeah.
And he's got a voice like Bane in Batman Dark Knight Rises, where you cannot understand what he's saying behind his
great.
mask.
Yeah.
It's an absolute mess.
By the way, about Dr. Doom, I noticed, I watched it twice, before the
Oh,
accident.
damn.
I love that. So
Before the accident, not only are Victor's henchmen around, but they're referring to him as His Highness.
yeah.
So,
Yes.
like, is he a
Yeah.
prince or something, maybe? Is
Yeah,
that
he's
why
the-
he has
he's
a
the-
castle?
Oh, you're right. He's the king of Latveria, but they never say he's in another
No,
country.
they don't. And in fact, as we said,
Oh.
his castle seems to be in America because
Perhaps.
they
It
never
seems like there was
leave
some
America.
line where they said where he was. Oh,
Oh.
okay.
Yeah, so we'll get
But
to
yeah,
that.
you're
a
right.
little
They do
later.
say he's His Highness. So I mean, we know as comic book fans, that
Right.
he's the king
If I
of
didn't know
Latveria.
anything about the Fantastic Four, I would be confused. But
You know what? If we had some lines of dialogue, maybe they were there and we didn't hear them, during the university scene where Reed was like, oh, just because you're a prince doesn't mean you can do this, blah, 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 that would have helped.
No, I kind of like that. It's just the henchman saying that he's Your Highness. I mean, that
Okay.
that kind of covers it. I think he's royalty and he has minders.
Okay. But he's Lair. He has like a throne that he sits on and stuff in there.
Anyway, he's happy because now he doesn't have to steal the gem. The leprechaun has done his job for him.
Right.
Because what he wanted to steal the gem because he wants to stop Reed's space launch.
Yeah.
Because he is obsessed with Colossus.
Let's talk about Dr. Doom's plans as the movie progresses.
At the moment, no one else is allowed to have the secrets to Colossus except him.
Right.
And he knows that no one else in the world
This is plan number one.
no one else in the world knows about Colossus. Even
So-
though Colossus is probably public knowledge.
Right.
Because the professor was telling them about it in the
Yes.
first scene.
Yes,
yeah, I
of
guess
course.
no other scientists are trying to do this.
I guess that professor's died. He seemed pretty old. Incidentally, he's played by George Gaynors, who was in the Police Academy movies
Oh.
Okay.
as the kind of like fusty superintendent of police.
Okay. Right. Okay. So Reed and the other Fantastic Four go up in this spaceship. I'm not sure why they're going up in the spaceship to Colossus,
Something to do with Colossus.
but they're using
Because
the
the
diamond
communists are going to get there first.
I guess they're thinking if they can get up there, they'll be closer to Colossus than they would be on the ground like they were 10 years earlier, my guess.
Yeah.
It's not. It
maybe.
might be covered in some dialogue that we can't hear.
That's just kind of
but-
understood for this whole movie.
Right. But the fake diamond, which was her power source, I guess explodes.
No, I think it's shielding
Oh.
or
Well, so
Because it's the-
Reed, while they're up there, Reed says the diamond's a fake. And so, and it's that the fakeness of the diamond is causing things to go haywire, apparently.
Right.
yeah. It's a crucial component, and
Right.
its failure means that they're exposed to the cosmic rays, and also the ship blows up in orbit.
Yeah, and somehow they fall to the earth and they're all fine.
I actually liked this bit.
What?
Call me
Okay,
crazy. Because
Yes.
Reed says, how come the
Yeah.
ship is in pieces, but
Yeah,
we're okay?
Oh, right.
What? We're okay, Reed. We're okay, huh? Exactly. Not a scratch on us, and the ship is in 100 pieces. We're fine. Come on, doesn't that bother anybody just a little?
They acknowledge it at least, yeah. So
Yeah.
apparently
Yeah.
their powers have made them invulnerable.
And it actually ties in, their powers have made them somehow invulnerable. I
Good point.
actually thought that
Well,
was
they-
a good little touch, which is not in the original comics.
You're right, actually. And it's a bit like, well, maybe they vanished into the cloud for a bit like Soren in the Nexus in Star Trek 7. And then
Yeah.
they rematerialized back on
Yes.
Earth, perhaps. But you're right, actually. I changed my mind. But I do notice that there's some good old Corman NASA stock footage in this scene.
Oh yeah,
We've
there's
got
lots of
some
stock
rockets.
footage in this movie. Nuclear explosions, footage of the
Yeah.
Earth, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, just
Yeah.
stolen from other sources.
Yep.
Um,
And the
so-
spaceship itself apparently lifted from an early Soviet science fiction film, which
okay.
Corman used over and over
Huh.
oh,
in his,
okay.
Okay.
500 movies.
I was wondering about that because they'd actually spend the money to build this like model
Nope.
spaceship.
It's just,
No,
it's
okay.
just Corman doesn't spend money. Corman, rather.
Right. Well, they made the whole movie for $1 million. We're told. I guess
Yeah,
not
I guess-
counting,
Yes,
not
he
counting
actually-
out of pocket from the actors and whoever.
He had a policy that none of his movies would cost more than $1 million, and he only ever lost money on, as far as I know, one movie, which was a movie called The Intruder, which was about segregation, and I think was Shatner's first movie. And because of the controversy around it, it lost money, and probably this movie because it was never released, of course. Which
He did not lose money on this movie. We can cover that
Yeah, it
later.
didn't
Okay.
sound like it from the
Oh no, this is
documentary.
part of the whole mystery.
Okay, interesting.
Oh yeah. There's so much wonderful mystery about how why this movie wasn't released.
Check the show notes for links to the 1984 Fantastic Four film and the documentary Doomed, the untold story of Roger Corman's Fantastic Four. Thanks to our patrons for supporting Deconstructing Comics, Critiquing Comics, and our other podcasts. To join them, go to patreon.com/deconcomics. Patrons get access to podcasts about the early years of The Amazing Spider-Man, Jim Starlin's run on Captain Marvel, including the expectations-defying graphic novel The Death of Captain Marvel, and, coming soon, Silver Age Batman. But you can only hear these shows if you pledge at least $4 a month. At the $2 level, my brother Paul and I discuss Batman 66 in our Batbits podcast. Check it out at patreon.com/deconcomics. Are you making a comic? Send it to us and we'll do a Critiquing Comics episode about it. Our theme is by J.B. Anderton. That's it for part 1 of our Fantastic Four 1994 discussion. Part 2 coming next week. Comic Book Movie Oblivion will be releasing the entire conversation this weekend. But in next week's DCP, there'll be more movie clips, so you don't want to miss that. Plus, we'll be getting into the reasons, or possible reasons, why this film never hit theaters. That's next week. Till then, this is Tim, and thanks for listening to Deconstructing Comics.